Welcome back to the Rogue Trader podcast with me, Nick Leeson. I'm joined today by a market veteran. I hope he doesn't mind me calling that, or a market expert as well, because I've seen some of his calls over his market calls over the last number of weeks, and they've always been fantastic. So it's Tony Laporta. Tony, you've worked around various different markets. I know you spent a lot of time on LIFFE. We've got some mutual friends, so I'd like to maybe if you give a brief introduction to yourself and let us know exactly where you have traded and what you've traded, and maybe a couple of interesting stories about your time on the markets.
Well, I've been in the business 46 years, so
Wow.
obviously I have a few stories.
Yeah.
But I started in January of '79 on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange,
Right.
and within minutes I went from $100 a week to $150 a week to, by June of '79, I was working on the top step of the gold pit. Now, Chicago had a gold pit, but New York NYMEX had COMEX had the main gold pit, but we still did 1/3 the volume. So there was an arb, and
Right.
and I basically started in the gold pit when gold was around 275, 280 an ounce. And
Wow.
from June of '79 till January of '80, it went up to 870.
Wow.
And I worked next to two gentlemen, John Oberman and Michael Manini. They were order fillers. Michael Manini was the trader as well, and he taught me a really good lesson back then, because we're talking 1979. There was no Globex. There was no, so the gold pit opened at I think 7:30 and closed it at 1:15 Chicago time, and after that it was closed. And he told me, he said, in a market, and this is when the market's taken off and no one knows why. We know why now, but the market's taking off. And he told me, he said, in a market like this, you always go home long one contract every night, at least one, because if the market opens higher and you're not long, you're going to want to short it. And these are not the kind of markets you short. And that was a very valuable lesson I learned, and I still use. It's like, I really like this market. Let me just buy a one lot, and then because then you keep an eye on things. So I basically did that, and started trading in 1982, early '82. And this is where it gets interesting, because I mean, my father was a bricklayer. We had no money. I had to impress the money down on the floor of the Mercantile Exchange for someone to back me.
Yeah.
And they did. And I started trading in the certificates of deposit pit. And I started out with $25 in my trading account. And in 6 months, I had built it up to 100 grand.
Wow.
And yeah, well, I made 100 grand. I didn't build it up to 100 grand, because then in 2 weeks I lost 70, and I had to go borrow 10 grand to pay off the debt.
Right.
And in the meantime, the minute I paid off the debt, they fired me. I worked for them for 3 years, and they fired me. And literally, and I was a smoker back then. And literally 2 days later, I get a phone call from one of my mates that I used to smoke with on the side, and he said, I got a couple of lads here from London. They're looking to blah blah blah. And by August of '82, I'm in London.
Right.
And wow, and just like, wow.
So you started in LIFFE in '82. So that was very early days.
On the first day, September 30th, 1982, I was there for the opening bell, and I worked there from '82 to '88. And then came home, got married, had a couple of kids, and then went back from '91 to '97.
So you've been there through some real volatile, crazy days. The crash of '87 being one of them. Have you got some stories from that time?
Well, and I do, and I'll share one thing with your viewers. Do you know, over the crash of '87, that's when flight to quality, flight to safety was coined. I don't know if you know that.
No.
On October 19th, I get a phone call from one of my American buddies who I met in London, actually, and he's trading cash bonds in New York. And he calls me up during the crash. He says, everyone sold their stocks and bought bonds. And the next day, and Life didn't have a limit. The Board of Trade had a 3 full point limit, but Life didn't have a limit. And that next day, October 20th, the bonds traded up 11.5 full points.
Wow.
360 some ticks, something like that.
Wow.
And needless to say, I was short for the last 90, and had a really good morning, and then come back from lunch. And then, as you might know or remember, back in the 80s, what did you do at lunchtime? You had a couple of cocktails. I mean, they said the city of London was 1 square mile, and there was a drink, and there was drink licenses for 365 for every day of the year in that 1 square mile, and they're probably not far off. But had a really good morning. Everyone went out and had a drink, and then came back and took profits and everything. And then it's like, okay, but let me just get short 10 bonds here. And the Eurodollars in Chicago were called 100 higher. Right. So I get short 10. They rally another point. So I've given back some of my morning profits. I sell another 10, and the Eurodollars open 250 better. And the bonds scream 3 more points for the 96 ticks. And now all of a sudden I'm out like 60, 70 grand, and I've got a lot of it, but not all of it. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what the hell am I going to do? I guess, first off, don't hand in your cards, because if they find out at the desk that you're skint, they're going to get you out. Yeah. So, went out, had a couple of cigarettes, this and that. And I came back into the pit, and one of my mates who I used to go to Chelsea football with comes in on the other side of the pit, and we are 88-20 bid for 40 right next to me. And Solomon Brothers via my mate comes in at 88 even. So I go sold, as one does, sold. And he says 20 cross 20. You were allowed to cross back then. Yeah. And then my friend goes down to 87.5, at 87, at 8, and he's trading at 86.5, at 86. Now, and I've added to a loser, and that's one thing I don't do anymore, because that was scary. But somewhere around 86, like the whole trade's a scratch. So now I'm still up money from the morning. And then he goes at 85.5, at 85, at 84.5. Now it's time for me to get close to him, because now I'm having a big day, and I don't want to buy 84.5 if he's going to sell 84s at 83.5. I'm waiting for him to say just whatever. And he finally gets his house. He's knocked the market down to 83.5. Wow. From 88.5, 5 full points, and I'm short 40. That's 200 grand. Yeah. And he says just, and I went buy 60. As one does. And now I can take the cards to the desk. So I take the cards to the desk, and as I get to the desk, it's 85 even bid. Of course it is. He's knocked the market down that far. So I go rushing back in, 20 at 85.5, sold them. Thank you very much. Walked right out of the exchange that day and walked right around the corner to see Trevor. I don't know if there's some lifers here who remember who Trevor is. He was a travel agent, and I bought 2 tickets around the world.
And got away from there.
And walked away. Right. Bought 2 tickets, flew on Qantas around the world. It was fantastic, just fantastic. So
lovely. But that's and you hear a lot of stories like that, on a smaller scale. Some people have a great day on a Monday, and then they don't turn back up on the Tuesday, Wednesday. They're not always chasing the markets. And sometimes I think that's one of the traps that people get themselves into. Yours is a very extreme example where you got onto Qantas and you're going around the world. But, I hear so many stories. I wasn't there in 87, but there's guys that I would know that really made their name that day, made their money that day, and that set them up for the businesses that they now run. I mean, one of the guys that would be a mutual friend of both of ours he's still running a massive gold fund out of Singapore these days and doing very, very well with it. But I love the story about you don't put your cards in because they'll see what your position is and they're going to come in, they're going to pull you out of that pit and you're going home one way or another.
Yeah.
And that was the trick, really, on that day. And, people whose
But
cards they
but
were getting.
but also
Go
on that day, there were so many fires being put out all over the floor
Yeah, yeah,
that it was hard to keep track of everyone, you know.
yeah, yeah. But there were people that were literally carried out that day if they did have a losing
Well, yeah,
position. You weren't trading for a firm, you were trading for
uh,
yourself. Yeah.
absolutely.
So you had somebody clearing you, and they had to keep an eye on what was going on, and ultimately it worked out for you. And it just reminds me of stories, and again, mutual friends that we have. If JP Morgan walked into the pit, or Salomons, as you've said in your example there, and they've got a big order, the market's going where they say it's going to go, and you're just waiting for that timing to get in and flip your own position around, and you've done the clever thing, and you've got in front of Salomons, you've added to your position, which you've said you don't do anymore. But you don't have the influence of Salomons next door to you, or one of those guys with a fairly big order to move either. But I totally get that. So after you did the world tour, you were back to the US, were you trading again in Chicago?
Well, I worked in London from 82 to 88. The crash was obviously in
Mm,
87.
mhm.
And I left in 88 and then came back in 91 and did 6 more years. And
Right,
and I'm pretty sure when I came back in 91, now the Bund was trading on Life.
right.
And the Bund was the trick, the Bund was the
Yeah, yeah.
market. If you liked action, if you like true action, the Bund was the trade. And it was fun. Well,
And you,
even though the true action was with Terry Crawley in the BTP pit. I don't know if you know that name.
I do, and
And it's
one of the guys that we know would have been very big in the Bund as well. So, but you were principally a futures trader.
100%,
Okay.
100%. A couple of years ago, I put on a corn. Um, I bought some calls, and by the time, and 6 months later, the Russians crossed the border into the Ukraine, and
Okay.
the seven when corn was 5.50 a bushel, those $7 calls that I bought were corn traded up to 7.70,
Lovely.
and I took profits. I took profits twice. The day they crossed the border, and then they took them up a little bit further. And I turned around, and I know how I am I'm an addict. I don't know if you know this, but I'm 21 years sober, and
Okay.
and I know how I am. And so I took the money, bought a house, just
Okay.
paid cash for a house. Thank you very much, and I'm still sitting in it. So
Okay. Lovely. I mean, one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I know you don't have the charts with you today, but maybe if you could explain, because I think these are some of the best calls that I've ever seen, and I think, briefly before we came on here, you said pretty much the same thing. But the Voodoo lines and
right,
the Voodoo trades that you refer to, there was one just a few weeks ago around 118 in the euro dollar, or just slightly above
yeah,
118, but
118.11, yeah.
yeah, but that was a fantastic trade. And so, when I see these pop up on Twitter or wherever you're posting those, they always draw my attention. But maybe an explanation verbally about the Voodoo lines.
So I met a gentleman in 2015, 2016, who was a big Elliott Wave man. Now I'm not a
Right,
fan of Elliott Wave, because this wave is that wave, and they're never wrong because it was just a different wave. But this gentleman is probably, and I will still take this with me till the end, the greatest Elliott Wave guy I have ever been around.
right.
And I watched him, and it's got to be 7, 8, 9 years ago, but he shorted crude oil above, based on his analysis,
Hmm.
above $100 a barrel. And 13 months later, he sent me an email, and he said, "I feel like I just lost my best friend. I just covered my short crude, at $28, and he was
Wow.
shorted for 13 months.
Wow.
And you know, and people, when things like that happen, that builds up the credibility. But I've had these Voodoo Lines. He's the gentleman that invented these Voodoo Lines, and I've had these Voodoo Lines in my back pocket for 10 years, and they are one of the greatest tools I've ever seen. I possess in the business. And
Right.
like you said, I mean, I've got I have 3 major Voodoo Lines, and the second major Voodoo Line is 118.11 in the euro, and it's gone up there twice. It went through there a little bit, got through there a lot the first time, and the whole idea with the Voodoo Lines is they're there. That's where, if you're long, that's where you take profits. If you want to get short, you use your other tools to figure out if that should be the trade or not. So.
Okay.
And these Voodoo Lines, they're just, I don't know. I use them. I look at them every day. And for me, they're the finest tool I have in my trader's toolbox.
Okay. And are you actively still trading every single day, Tony, or
every minute of the day?
Still addicted to the trading? It's still gotcha.
Well, you know what it is. It's not. Yeah. Am I addicted? Sure, but I'm kind of good at it. And you know what? And I live 11 miles from the Strip. I live in Las Vegas. I live 11 miles from the Strip. So little did I know, all the times I'd been to Vegas, that this part, this is like suburbia was here, because you never really leave the Strip. You never leave the downtown area. But a mile and a half from my house is a beautiful casino. Right. There's casinos all in the outskirts as well. These people are gambleaholics. I swear. And those casinos on the weekends especially are printing money, absolutely printing money. It's amazing. And so I walk there every day, and I have a little bet. Every day I have a little bet, and that's it. So, am I addicted? Sure, but I'm kind of good at it.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I'm not that good at it, or history tells us that I'm not that good at it. I think I'm getting better. But yeah, it is one of those things. It's the markets are great because no 2 days are the same. There's always something else going on. There's something else you have to come to terms with. So, it's always a test of your wits. And I think we all like that. There's a competition element to it as well within that. And it's about testing yourself, and it suits some people, it doesn't suit other people. I think, when I look back at my time in Singapore, I was always chasing, and that's not a good thing. I think if you get into a situation where you're always chasing the markets, and even you've explained, as many years as you've been doing this, and as successful as you've been over that period, you've got to learn the hard lessons. You've been up, you've been down, and you've had to pull yourself together and pull yourself through some of those as well. And those are probably the most important things. But we had a quick chat.
But it's still going on. Nothing's changed. The most difficult thing about my job these days is trying to figure out what side of the bed the president of the president of the United States is going to wake up on, because you can have a position and literally go to the loo and come back and you're down $5,000.
I think my guess is he's going to quieten down over the rest of the term. I mean, I'm not sure what he can dream up next. We've had the tariffs. He's probably going to, I think he's going to solve the war in Ukraine at some point. That seems to be on his agenda. But quite what he does next in the remainder of his term, I'm not really sure. He's thrown a lot at the markets over the last 6 to 9 months or so since he's been there.
I mean, last night,
he
fires Lisa Cook, and the S&Ps, everything falls out of bed. It's come roaring back, but not,
He's definitely he's definitely a law unto himself.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And when he was elected, before he took over, I told all my client base, I said, well, guess what? This is PTSD 2.0. here we go. And boy, I nailed that one. Whew.
Yeah.
It's it's the markets are not easy, and the hardest thing is when he knocks the market down, to close your eyes and buy it. And
Yeah.
that's been the trade. I mean, we just traded new all-time highs recently, I mean,
Yeah, but that's and I think we've all got this. What would you memories, I suppose, or things that are ingrained in us. And I'm sure, when you see something like that, and you see the market coming off as aggressively as it did after that Liberation Day announcement and the
right.
tariffs. You've got the muscle memory, if you like, of the crash of '87, and not a lot of people have got that, but it is a case of being quite resolute and picking when to buy. And in the occasion that, or the situation you gave us before, when the order filler's in there and they've got a big sell order, you jump in front of that, although it's increasing your position as well, because you can see which way that's going. It's not so easy these days when you've got, when you're trading behind a screen. So your transition to the screen, that was seamless, or you've had to learn different skills along
Yeah,
the way?
no, pretty much. I was still trading the Bund so I was there from 91 to, so in 1996, I'm already 40 years old.
Right.
And I'm still trading the Bund as a local, but and you had to write like this because it was packed.
Yeah, yeah.
And God bless them. I mean, I grew up on the south side of Chicago. Growing up on the south side of Chicago is no different than growing up in Essex. No different. And those East End boys, they knew, they may have had minimal education, but they had street education.
Yeah,
And they were great traders, absolutely great traders.
yeah,
And I eventually I didn't want to take the physical punishment anymore. And I kind of
yeah,
stepped out of the pits a little bit and learned how to trade from afar. And they've been telling me since I arrived in the business that computers would put us out of business someday. And they haven't. And they should. And they should have. I feel I'm still on top of my game. I still look for certain things. I'd like to say I'm a technician, but really I'm a tape reader. I'm a correlation guy.
yeah, yeah. And so it's all trading from home now, and you give out. So I mean, I see your analysis coming across social media from time to time. So you promote that side of it as well, the Voodoo Lines and
What
everything
what
that you do.
what I did was I started what I missed, and what a lot of people don't realize is, when you worked on the floor, you shared ideas with all your
Yeah, yeah,
mates.
yeah.
And they had an idea, you had an idea, you bounce things around a little bit, and I missed that. So
Yeah.
I started a virtual trade room,
Great.
and which has just been fantastic. I've got a couple three four I've got a couple of 3 4 great traders, guys in their early 40s,
Right.
who are knocking stocks around. I mean my one mate, he's from Vancouver. He does, when stocks are moving, he'll trade 2 million shares a day,
Wow.
and he's scalping them. He's scalping them.
Right.
And
So, so
have go on.
no, I was going to say, so people can join the trade room that you've got.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, look,
Absolutely.
what we'll do is we'll share all the details at the end of this. But what I'd love to do, Tony, I'd love to get you back on as well, and maybe bring Jason on as well, and
That's
and
good.
the two of you can have or the three of us can have a chat about
Right.
some of the things that went on during that time. Because as you've alluded to there, trading is a very lonely business when you're sat at home and things aren't going well. And that's why I think something like that trade room is just fantastic.
Well, and
You've got people.
I'd like to send you a link to it,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so you can at least come in and have a look. At the moment it's August, and
it's
August,
quiet.
put your hands in your pockets, plain as can
Yeah,
be. Cut your size down by 90%, and and a lot of my traders are gone. The kid from
right.
Vancouver, he's actually in Las Vegas at the moment, and and it's what I learned about this business, or what I learned about myself, is trading is 80%, if not more than that, mental,
Yeah.
and 20% actual. I
Yeah.
am the problem. It's not it's not Bernanke's fault. It's not Yellen's fault. It's not Trump's fault. They don't click the mouse. I click the mouse. I
Sure.
am the problem.
Yeah.
And
But
that is one thing.
if you're the problem, you're also the solution.
Well, that's what, and I have two different trading careers. I'm 21 years sober. So,
Right.
so the
And,
first,
and was is there a big difference between the two? Is there?
oh, well, yeah, you're not waking up with a hangover.
Well, yeah, I know that from my time in Singapore. It was one of the
Right.
ways to avoid everything that was going on. It was all about avoidance, and
But
alcohol was
there
certainly
is
a way of doing it.
because I have 4 children and they have addictive personalities. So it's it's I feel it's my job to be a good example for them. They're all still out there. They're all drinking and drugging and doing, saying bad words. And eventually, and the big comment is, well, Dad, you didn't get sober till you were 47.
And
I wish.
do any of them work in the markets, or did you keep them all away from the markets?
No, that pretty much. I mean, I only do the markets via open outcry, and
Yeah.
and that ended, at the turn of the 2000, 2001 sort of thing. So, and believe me, I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. If open outcry was still alive today, they'd be in there knocking it about. They would have, because they have that gut instinct. That's one thing I tell traders. I told my kids, your finest trading tool that you have is that gut instinct.
Yeah.
Listen to it. So
yeah, no, 100%. Tony, look, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, and I do want to get you back with Jason and maybe one or two of the other guys as well, and share a few stories from the pits, because I think people of a younger generation find it fascinating. Their learning paths are very different to ours. All of our paths are very different as well, and I think there's a lot to share. And I suppose one of the things that I've learned more so than anything else over the years is just that power of communication and sharing ideas, as you said, and sharing your problems and sharing everything else that goes on in your life. I think it's probably the most powerful tool that you have. And I wasn't good at sharing years ago, and I never asked for help and advice, and probably the easiest thing that I could have done, and I was surrounded by people that could have helped me, but I didn't do that. So I'm always a big advocate of anything like that. So the virtual trading room sounds like good fun, and if you send me the link, I'll definitely be there.
absolutely,
And
to have a look,
yeah,
and see how I do my business, sort of
yeah,
thing.
no, that'd be
And
that great.
and
That'd be great.
I honestly think it'll be appealing to you.
Yeah,
The most important, after Wall Street closes, I write in
yeah,
anticipation of the next day. And for years, Alan Dickinson,
yeah,
Dicko, they call him. He was running. I can't remember the name of the company he was running, but they subscribed to my service. And Dicko used to say, I get to the office and yours is the first thing I read every morning. And
yeah.
because I'm basically kind of giving a recap of what America did and what I'm thinking going forward. So
Yeah, yeah, and likewise, the stuff I do with Jason. Like, obviously, I've known Jason for a large number of years, and I love the stuff that he does as well. But yeah, no, look, you can incorporate them all. That's the thing.
right,
It's
yeah,
everybody's got, as you said, everybody's got different ideas. Sharing those ideas is a way to learn. I don't think there's a better way, and we've all got a bit of experience, good experiences, bad experiences, and they're all part of the learning process, and we're willing to share them, which I think is fantastic for a younger generation. So
yeah.
before I let you go, and I'm going to throw this on you, so you might not have the answer to this. So which is the voodoo line that we should be looking out for next? Which is the market that we should Maybe be paying attention for. And I'm sorry for
There's
throwing it on your last minute.
we're not really that close to any of the majors at the moment.
Okay.
There's some Voodoo Lines above in the corn market. I'm actually long a little bit of corn,
Okay.
and they've worked out really well. I'd have to, and it's very difficult for me to answer this question only because it's August, and I pulled away as well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And when I'm stuck in it, I am stuck in it. But
Yeah.
you know what? I haven't. I pulled away a little bit, and that's what I needed to do, because I still trade my own money, and it's also a good example to my other. I have 50, 60 people in my trade room, so it's a good example to them that years ago I used to host a dinner in Chicago, and two of my floor friends came to the dinner, and we get to talking, and it's August, and one of the screen traders that had come, he said, all right, I got you people here. I want to know what is so bad about August. And my two friends, the look that they gave him, he learned. They didn't need to say a word. He learned that day, and we're still learning. You know what? Quit learning, quit earning.
Yeah. Okay, so look, we'll get into the virtual trade room, and we'll learn more about the Voodoo Lines there.
There you
That's
go.
probably the easiest to do it. And August, we continue to sit on our hands, but September is coming.
I mean, and what I can tell you, I have all these different chats. Do you know Discord?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Discord is a phenomenal tool, and but I post 20 to 22 charts every night, so you can see the Voodoo Lines right on the charts. I mean, they're plain as can be.
All right,
so
lovely. Well, look,
then you could have a look around.
Yeah, we'll do that. Get the link over to me, and we'll. I'll certainly be on there very, very soon. And thank you very much, Tony, for everything today. And like I said, we will do this again as long as you're happy to do that.
Yeah. Cheers, Nick. Very nice. Very nice meeting you and chatting with you. Cheers.
Thank you very much.